Hello my friends, today I'm going to share with you my journey of making my all-time favorite bread, sourdough. This journey has passed through many stages of experimenting, trials, until it reached this final look of a bread that I can finally and proudly say that I'm happy and satisfied with, and I'm also happy to share the recipe with you. So if you have the time, patience and passion of making such a long process for a loaf of or two of bread, then this video is for you. That was my very first loaf. As you can see, it didn't rise and it had so many problems. However, it had a great taste. And that was my second loaf of bread. It has risen a little bit and it also had this crispy ear on top and it has a good taste. However, it had also many problems. It got burnt from the bottom because I was using gas oven. So my advice to you is to use electric oven. And it also had these big air pockets from the inside, which was a fermentation problem. So it was either over or under fermented. I have no idea what was wrong with the process. However, something was wrong. And that was my latest loaf of bread, the one that I'm happy to share with you the process of making it. First of all, you will need to make a starter that will last for years and years to come. To make the starter, I use dark rye flour. You can use any type of flour, but I like the taste and the benefits of rye flour. You will also need an empty, clean, sanitized jar. You can boil any jar and let it to air dry without drying it with the towels or paper towels or anything. Just let it air dry completely. You will also need a thermometer to measure the temperature of your water. Some people also measure the temperature of the dough itself. Another crucial thing, not only in baking sourdough, in baking in general, is a kitchen scale. I will put my empty jar on the kitchen scale and I will note the weight of it. I'll write it down on a piece of paper. This was 353 grams. I will also weigh my empty water jug and that was 671 grams. Then I will add 100 grams of rye flour, followed by 150 grams of water. This water needs to be lukewarm, which is 36 degrees Celsius or 84 degrees Fahrenheit. If you don't have a thermometer, that's fine. It just needs to be lukewarm water. I will leave the dough. I will mix it very well. I'll leave it loosely covered by a plate for the next day. Day 2, you were not gonna notice any change. However, we'll start to feed the starter. I will remove some part of the starter. Unfortunately, this part we're not gonna do anything with it because the starter is not ready yet. By day 7, 8, or even 9, the starter will be ready. So any discard you will take from the starter, you can use in making pancakes. You can also make any other recipes, maybe put it in other bread recipes as well, focaccia bread or any other recipes. However, on day 1, you're not gonna use it, or it's not gonna benefit any recipe. So we will discard that and we will keep only 70 grams of starter. And that's why I said you have to measure your empty jar, because 353 grams plus 70 grams of starter is 423 grams. On these 70 grams, I'm going to add whole wheat flour, 50 grams only, and then another 50 grams of all-purpose flour. Then I'll add 115 grams of water, again, lukewarm water. I will mix it very well, loosely cover it, and then we go to day 3. Day 3, I will leave 70 grams of starter, 50 grams of whole wheat flour, 50 grams of all-purpose flour, and 115 grams of water. Day 4 is exactly the same. However, I will lower the water weight to 100 grams. So it's 70 grams of starter, 50 grams of whole wheat flour, 50 grams of all-purpose flour, and 100 grams of water. Day 5 is exactly the same of day 4. Day 6 onward, which is the recipe that I actually loved, I'm going to feed my starter by keeping only 50 grams of starter in a jar. I will add 10 grams of rye flour and 90 grams of all-purpose flour and 100 grams of water. And that is the recipe that I'm going to use for my sourdough, and I actually like the taste of that recipe more. And then during the process, you should probably notice any bubbles forming by day 6 to 7. If you didn't see any bubbles forming, just keep feeding the same feeding, which is 50 grams of starter in a jar. Add 10 grams of rye, 90 grams of all-purpose flour, and 100 grams of water. And keep doing that until you see change. Hopefully by day 7, 8, maybe 9 or 10, you will notice that your starter doubles in size. How to make sure that your starter is ready to bake the bread? You will have to do a floating test. Just take a little bit of the starter, scoop it on water, it should float. And here is how you make sure your starter is ready to bake. بالضبط هتفلوت فوق المية هتطفو. And then to make your bread, you will wait until the starter doubles in size, and then you will take 50 grams of starter. You will add 10 grams of whole wheat flour plus 90 grams of all-purpose flour plus 100 grams of water. And that is what we call a levain. Levain is a French word. I have no idea what it means, but this is the levain. You will leave that levain to double in size as well. I left it in my balcony. I live in Dubai. It's summer most of the year, but I was in summer in Dubai and it's 40-50 degrees outside. It took 4 hours to double in size. So basically you would wait as long as it takes until your levain doubles in size. Then you're going to start to make your bread. I used bread flour. I used 150 grams of strong bread flour, usually with 12% protein. I added 100 grams of whole wheat flour, and then I added 750 grams of all-purpose flour. Mix it very well. Then add 660 grams of lukewarm water, which is 36 degrees Celsius. Mix it very well until you get a shaggy dough. Technically, you want to make this mixture in the last half an hour of the increase of your levain. So you spend 4 hours. In the last half an hour, you can just make this mixture until you get that shaggy dough, and then cover it, leave it to rest for half an hour. Then add 20 grams of table salt. Don't use Himalayan or sea salt or rock salt or all these kind of salt, because they're not going to salt your dough very well. So use a table salt for that. 20 grams of salt, and then you will add your levain on top of the dough. Then you want to mix it extremely well. You want here to release the gluten, to activate the gluten that gives your bread this gooey, chewy texture that everybody loves about bread. So you can use a stand mixer, you can use your hand, just you need to really mix it. And here I asked my husband to help me because I got really tired of mixing the dough. Basically, you need to reach that stage when you have this window of gluten activate on the dough. Then let it rest for half an hour. After half an hour, you will do your first cycle of stretch and folds. Basically, you need first to wet your hands, and then you pull one side of the dough without breaking it all the way up, and then fold it to the other side. Then twist your bowl 90 degrees. Do that method again for the other side of the dough. Pull it all the way up, fold it, then twist for 90 degrees, pull it all the way until you do this 4 times. If you want to do it more times, it's more than fine. Just make sure your hands are wet while doing this. Cover it again, leave it for 1 hour. After 1 hour, you need to do the whole stretch and folds again, at least 4 times with wet hands. You pull all the way, you fold it over, pull all the way, fold it over, until you get this nice ball of dough. Then this time you will leave it only for 30 minutes. Then you will do coil folding, again with wet hands. You will pull the sides of the dough until it separates from the bowl. Pull it all the way up, and then fold it over itself, one side and the other. Then you need to twist your bowl 90 degrees, pull the dough from the sides until it folds over itself, as you can see in the video. Then cover the dough again, leave it to rest for 2 hours or until it doubles in size. And there is no maximum times you can do this. You can just keep doing it because I think this is relaxing dealing with a dough. And I forgot to mention, if there is any air pocket visible at that point, you just need to poke it to make sure that you release the air, because this will be in your bread. So make sure you release all air pockets you can see. Then you cover it, leave it for 2 hours or until it doubles in size. After 2 hours, it should be looking something like this. Make sure you release it or separate it from the bowl before you flip it over. Flip the bowl over a well-floured silicone mat. Then you need to spread or sprinkle a little bit of flour over the top, because you need to split this dough into 2 equal pieces. So you just put some flours in between and then separate it with silicone spatula or bench scraper. Then you fold the dough into 2 circles as much as you can. And this needs a bit of practice. So you just need to twist it, make sure that it's going into be rounds or balls of bread, and make sure it doesn't stick in your hand. Here, that was me doing my very first ever sourdough bread. I'm trying to get these perfect balls of bread. The dough was very sticky until I reached here, that stage. And at that stage, make sure your hands are well floured, not wet. And if there is any air pockets, make sure you release them. Basically, what we're trying to do here is to create tension on the surface of the dough. You do the same for the other piece of the dough, and you leave it to rest on the bench for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, you flip it over in order to get the seam side up and the smooth side down. Then you want to stretch your dough as much as you can in order to do the final shaping. Make sure you flour your hand, and then you stretch the bottom part of the dough and fold it over the middle. Then you do the same on the right part. You stretch it over, fold it into the middle, and exactly the same for the left part of the dough. Then you fold the dough over itself. You want here to create a bowl of bread. Make sure you create tension on the surface of the bowl. You can use your hands. You can also use a bench scraper, whatever makes it easy for you to shape the dough. Then you will get a Benetton. I don't have a Benetton. I just use a cake mold. Cover it with cheesecloth because you don't want the dough to stick into the mold. And then you sprinkle over rice flour. Some people say that you can sprinkle flour. I've never tried it. If you want, go ahead and do so. If you don't have the rice flour, I have a rice flour because we do Egyptian recipes with that. So you sprinkle over rice flour, and then you flip the dough again into the mold. Make sure the smooth side is down and the seam side is up. And again, for the final time, just try to create more tension by pulling the sides of the dough into the middle. If you don't want to do that step, it's absolutely fine. You already created tension at the beginning, but I just want to make sure that my dough will be secured. Then cover it with a plastic or put it in just a plastic bag. Leave it in the fridge for at least 8 hours or overnight. In the morning, while the dough is still in the fridge, you need to preheat your oven on the highest setting you have with a cast iron pot inside your oven for at least 40 to 50 minutes until you get very, very hot cast iron. Make sure you use electric oven at that stage because gas oven will burn your dough from the bottom. Make sure also your pot is cast iron. These are the best pots for sourdough bread, and they are not that expensive if you don't get a fancy brand, of course. While your pot is getting ready in the oven and your dough is still proofing slowly in the fridge, you need to prepare a parchment paper or a baking paper, and you'll take your dough out of the fridge and you flip it over the baking paper, sprinkle over a little bit of flour, and you need to score your dough. Why are we scoring the dough? Basically, because when you put the dough without scoring in the oven, it will open up by itself in an uneven shape. So we need to create an opening for the air to come out of the dough. So why don't we make it look cool? If you're not expert, you can just do one line, or if you like to create more cool shapes, you can do whatever design you like. I just did this design, And then you need to score a little bit of a fine line in the middle. I'll tell you why in a few seconds. Then you'll take your pot out of the oven. You take your dough straight with the baking paper inside your pot, and here you want to create steam in order for the dough to be not to get crusty and crispy at the first baking. So you will have to put some ice cubes between the pot and the parchment paper. Cover it straight away and put it inside your oven. Bake it for 7 minutes. After these 7 minutes, you need to take the pot out. You double score the fine line that you made in order to create more opening up for the bread, and it will look very cool. Cover it, bake it again for 13 minutes. So the total baking time with the lid on is 20 minutes. Then after these 13 minutes, you take the lid off, or even you can actually take the whole bread out of the pot and let it bake until you get this golden color all over your bread. Typically that would be between 20 to 25 minutes. It depends on so many factors. You just wait until the bread gets a nice brown color. You take it out, let it cool on a rack for 1 hour, maybe 1.5 hours, it doesn't matter, and then you slice it. And just the sound of the crust while you slice the bread is very satisfying. I guarantee 100% that you will fall in love with this bread. Look of how chewy and gooey from the middle the bread is. Very tender, yet it does have this crispy crust on top. You can use this bread in so many dishes. You can just make a crostini and use it with a fancy little lentil soup. You can just spread a feta cheese with thyme and olive oil on top. I like also to make a runny scrambled egg and spread it over the bread. There are thousands of recipes. You can just eat it like that. This is by far my favorite bread and my family's favorite bread as well. By the way, you can just leave it in the freezer as well. Just slice it, leave it in a freezer, take your daily consumption out, and enjoy every single bite of this bread. See you next time.